Hello friends, you're with the Lonesome Gamer, and I'm playing 1844 by Helmut Olay, published by Lookout Spiele and Double O Games, and I guess Mayfair might have been also involved. Now this game comes in the same box as 1854, which we did recently, and this is one of my favorites, I can say. 44 is a game that I only played once before, and that happened solitaire. So I gotta say I don't really know a lot about it, and different to 54 where I did a couple of games. But here, yeah, I'm still kind of exploring the game, and that is also the reason why it is already set up. And you know me, usually I just place the box on an empty table. Here I already did the first video and it turned out to be quite messy. I made a couple of serious mistakes, so I ended up deciding, hey, I'm gonna start it again. So yeah, let's get into the game. So the game is set in Switzerland. If you go back, maybe you can see it a little better. And you can already see the map is extremely busy. There's really a lot going on. It's yeah, it's a little hard to find things here. So let's try to take a closer look and get things clearer. So here, most of the southern area of Switzerland is mountains, and the usual cost is between 30 and 60. Two axes have 90. So it's not terribly expensive, but there's a lot. We also have here a couple of rivers for 20. There are specific mountain spaces, these gray ones here. And these are spaces where only tunnels can be placed, so you cannot place a tile there. The tunnels we know from 54, but here they work differently. You need a specific type of company, that's a tunnel company. We can see that here. No, that's not the wrong, that's wrong. That's a private company. This is a tunnel company, and you can buy these just like any certificate during your stock round for 50 bucks. They're all the same, and if a player owns a tunnel company, then one of his companies is allowed to place a tunnel for 100 bucks. And yeah, just simply do it like this. So you can also use a curved tunnel, and then you got to flip the company. And once the tunnel has been used by a train, it will now pay off 10 every operating round to the player. So you got quite an investment. The player has to pay 50 bucks, the company has to pay 100 bucks, but then you get something in return. In addition, the tunnel also adds a bonus to the route, but we will get to this later. Overall, there are 5 tunnel companies available, and when they are used, no other tunnels can be built. We have here a a special tile, very weird, this one here, and a private company called this one here, the Furka Oberalpbahn. They will place this tile, and eventually it has to be placed. So at some point in the game this tile definitely will be placed, and that basically adds this line of track here. And you can, these are still tunnel places, so you can still build tunnels on this line. When the company does that, so let me put it that way, when a player does it, it will give him, the company will be closed, it doesn't pay off anymore, and it gives the company, the player $80. But then he cannot sell it to a company. It is also possible to sell this private to a company first, and then when the company places the tile, the company will get $80 in return. So that's probably what you prefer to do, because in this game, like in 1830, you can sell privates up to double the face value to companies. From different to 1830, you can do it from 1 franken to double the face value, not from half to double the face value. What else is going on? We have these symbols here, these hexes, a couple of them. I think also we got 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And these are so-called mountain railroads. And we have here also these special companies. And similar to the tunnel companies, they may also be purchased during a stock round. They cost $150. And the moment the player buys such a company, he has to place one of these mountain company tokens on such a hex. And they are a little different. For example, this one pays 10, 20, 50, 80. And this one, for example, plays 10, 50, 80, 10. And you can see it here, the 3 different options you have. Overall, there are 6 companies, and I think probably 2 of each. Yeah. And these hexes then may be used as a terminus for your route. We have 2 double O tiles here and here. This thing here is not a double O tile, Aarau. It will eventually, when it upgrades to green, it will simply become a standard city. We have 3 major cities. This one here, Lausanne. There are specific L tiles. We have Bern, B tiles, and we have Zurich, Z tiles. We have obviously also off-board areas, these red ones here. What's special about them is it is possible, similar to 1846, you can do east-west runs, and you get a bonus here, for example 90, and down here it's also 90. Here it would be 50. And here we also have north-south runs. So for example here you get 30, and down here would be 50, and the bonus of both off-board locations will be then simply added to the revenue of the company. So I guess that's pretty much most important things on the map. So let's talk a little about the companies. And we already talked about the tunnel companies, about the mountain companies, mountain railroads. We go a little more into detail about the privates later. And these are all the share railroads. So you can see it's pretty insane. And that makes this game very hard. I mean, there are just so many, and there are three different, that's not true, there are actually 4 different types of share companies. And in addition, you have all these small one certificate things going on. So let's see what we have. Well, first of all, you got your standard companies, these 10 share companies, and there are 6. And the way they capitalize is that you got to buy 50%, and then they will float, but they only receive half of their capital until phase 6. From phase 6, you have a standard full capitalization. And of course you have a par value down here, also here, and yeah, they get basically then, when they float, 5 times the par value, from phase 6 10 times, and they will receive the other half of the capital when they reach their destination. And that's another that's another kind of complicated thing if you have to figure out which company to start. First there are so many, and then you got to find the destination of them. And you can see here they got this, there is this little marker here, and it's not written on the company sheet. So there is already so much going on the map here. That's not easier because of this little art here. That all makes it more busy. But so it's not that easy to find these things, but okay, I mean, it's not impossible either. At least they give you these small markers. So once you place a tile on these hexes, you can place a marker on top so that you remember that there is a destination. Then we've got these companies here. These are regional companies, the 3 blue ones. And these are 5 share companies. So every share is 20%. The president certificate is a double share with 40%. Now they will float when 3 shares are purchased. And they will receive the full capital always when they float. And so they have no destination where they have to go. In addition to that, we've got the, but they only receive 5 times the par value because they only have 5 shares. So they will definitely have lower capital available than your major companies, which will eventually receive 10 times the value. Then we got these Pre-Staatsbahnen, and these are the gray ones here. We got 5 of them. These are 4 share companies. They also have a destination on the map. So They float when you buy 2 of the 4 shares, and they start with twice the par value as a starting capital. It's also only half the capital that they receive, exactly like the major companies, and the other half they receive when they arrive or when they are connected to their destination. Problem is, different to the major companies, which receive 5 times their par value because they have 10 shares, they only have 4 shares, so they will only receive 2 times their par value. That can be a big issue here. Eventually, these companies will then only receive 4 times the par value, which is not a lot of money. The good thing is they do not necessarily need a train. There is no mandatory train purchase for these companies, and it is also not allowed for the president to do some kind of emergency financing or to help them to get a train. The other companies all do need a train, and you have some emergency financing going on, not the Pre-Staatsbahn. When the first 5 train comes out, all these Pre-Staatsbahn will then fall into the SSB, the SBB. And there is this kind of big merger when basically all the money goes into the SBB, all the money of these Pre-Staatsbahn, all the tokens on the map are replaced with SBB tokens. The trains go into the SBB, but you have to you cannot go over the train limit. And in addition, the SBB will get $400. The shares will be replaced by SBB shares, and 1 share is 5% of the SBB. So presidency of a pre-state company will be a 10% share, and there are 5 of these, and all the other shares will be replaced by a 5% share. 2 other things are important to remember here. First, only the regionals and the majors are allowed to buy in private companies. And that was the big mistake that I made during my first game. I bought in I thought, hey, that's a cool idea. I'm gonna exploit the pre-state railroads. They don't need a train, and eventually, if they don't have any money left, who cares? Because they will fall into the Staatsbahn anyway. So the idea was to sell them the privates, but yeah, that ain't working. Only the ones you don't want to hurt, they are allowed to buy in the privates. And another interesting point are the trains. Well, the biggest train is an express train, but I'm not talking about that now. Your standard trains have a double-sided. They have a standard train, and there is a hex side for the train too. So hex trains work here. They count the hexes, and they include your starting hex. So some hex trains only count the edges of the hexes basically, but they really count the hexes themselves. So a 2 hex train means you can go basically from here to here. What's more important is, or what is also terribly important, you cannot use off-board locations with your hex trains. Some of the companies, the regionals, are only allowed to own hex trains. So those can never go to off-board locations, which can be sometimes very, very attractive. Like in many games, the off-board locations can be the most attractive locations, or up there. Well, you cannot go there with your regional companies, so that's clearly an issue. The H trains are a little less expensive though than your standard trains. Another aspect and another problem with the standard trains, except for the higher price, is they will be eventually downgraded to a hex train. And that happens usually when they are no longer the most recent train. So for example, if a 3-type train is purchased, the 2 trains, they don't rust. They rust as usual when the 4 trains come into play, but they are downgraded to a 2H train. Okay? And so as soon as these are no longer the most modern trains, they become less efficient basically and are downgraded. And when then the first 4 train comes into play, the 2 and the 2H trains become obsolete. Well, that is obviously nonsense. Only the 2H trains become obsolete because there are no longer 2 trains in the game. The same applies to the 3 train. The 4 train is a little bit better. The 4 train is not downgraded when a 5 train comes into play. It is downgraded when the 6 train comes into play, I think. And then it rusts when the next... Gosh. Yeah, exactly. And then it rusts when the 8 express train comes into play. I wonder if the 5H trains, for example, are downgraded. Gotta check that. Okay, so let's see. We got... So here the 4 trains, when the 6 train is purchased, the 4 trains become 4H trains. And when the 7 train is purchased, yeah, indeed, the 5 trains become 5H trains, and the 4 trains are totally destroyed. So the 5 trains are still permanent, but they will be downgraded to 5H trains. Okay. So I'm gonna do a 5-player game, and before I'm gonna auction the privates, I want to go through them quickly. So private number 1 is nothing exciting. It simply pays out $5 and can be sold to a company for 40 eventually. Private number 2 pays out 10. 50 is the value, and it can be sold for 100, and you get a free yellow tile placement. I think that can be also a city. I'm not totally sure, I gotta check that. But basically it gives you a free yellow tile placement in addition to your standard tile. Number 3, revenue of 15, $80 face value. You receive a free tunnel company. That is the one that comes with the private tunnel company number 1. So that thing would be worth $50 basically. And yeah, I already said that. once you build the tunnel and once it is used, it gives you a $10 revenue. One thing about the tunnel and the mountain companies, at the end of these are never closed. And at the end of the game, when they have been used, or when they paid out the revenue at least once, then they are also worth their face value. So they give you extra money basically at the end of the game. Then we got the company number 4, this one here, pays out a revenue of 20, can be sold to a major for 220. It is closed once this tile is played, and then the owner will receive $80. And when this tile is not placed, at the moment the 5 trains comes into play, then it is mandatory to place this tile. Company 5 is basically the Camden and Amboy of 1830. It pays out a revenue of 25. It can be sold to a company for $140, and in addition you get a 10% share of the MOB, which is located here, and probably not a bad company. I think it is next to Lausanne, and yeah, it might be. I think it might be one of the good companies of the game. Let's find company number 6. Where is that? Yeah, that's that one over here. Company number 6 is basically your B&O. It pays out $30 until the F&M runs its first train. It cannot be sold to a major company, and it comes with the presidency of the F&M. Now, in many games, these companies are not that great, and it's a similar thing here. So the problem is, or the good thing is, it pays out until maybe it's actually not that bad. It pays out until the first train runs. In some other games, it only pays out until the company buys a train, so you have one less turn. So here you get basically $30 more, and the thing is that the major companies in this game are at the start of the game usually not that strong compared to the minor companies, simply because they might pay out a little more revenue, or they might make a little more revenue compared to the minor companies, simply because they have more money, they can run the standard 2 trains, and so they might be able to afford more trains. But the problem is that they have these 10% shares. So if I buy, let's say, 3 shares of a regional company, I get 60% of the revenue. If I buy 3 shares of a pre-state company, I even get 75% of the revenue, while if I buy 3 shares of a major company, I only get 30% of the revenue. And usually a major company does not make, in the early stages of the game, double the revenue that one of these smaller companies makes. So there is actually a good chance, or there is a certain chance, that this company might not even get started in the first stock round. So maybe it pays out the 30 bucks a little longer than this would be the case, for example, in 1830. So the last company here is the Lokfabrik Oerlikon. And that's an interesting company because it's basically a permanent train. So it doesn't pay out any revenue. It costs 100 bucks and you're not allowed to sell it into a major company. But you get this special train here, EVA. That's a 5H train, it's a permanent train. And well, it's worth 400 bucks. You can not use this train right at the beginning of the game. You can only use the train once the 5 trains come actually into play. But then, and immediately then, you can assign that train to one of your companies. So you have a permanent train. You know, okay, I don't have to be afraid that I might be trainless with one of my companies. I have a permanent train. But that's 100 bucks that you have to pay for it, at least. And it might, it doesn't give you any income until the 5 trains come out. So it's a tricky thing. So I'm gonna do now the auction of the privates. I will do that off camera because it's simply not too interesting to see me rolling dice and figuring out a semi-random way how that makes sense. But it works different than the auction in 1830. The companies are auctioned in ascending order, starting with company number 1. The player number 1 will have the first bid for company number 1, and then when that is auctioned, player number 2 will have the first bid on company number 2, and so on. When a player passes, he cannot re-enter the auction for that specific company. So it's a little more intuitive maybe than these complicated waterfall auctions, for example. It's just your standard auction. Okay. Now there's one thing that I wanna point out. So compared to 1830, this is a game where you can also, like in 1830 and some others, you can sell the companies for double the face value into your major company or into a regional company. However, it's a little tricky here. I'm not sure if you can always do that actually, or if it always makes sense to do it. I'm not sure about that. In 1830, you basically always want to do that, right? Because you want massively this early money. Usually the game ends with a bankruptcy, and very often there simply is no late money because the game ends before before the companies start making these high runs during the end game. I'm not saying that it's always like that, but when we play, I don't know, kind of like 80% or 70% of the game simply end with a bankruptcy because one player is not able to buy the D train. So you don't have this long end game, and often it really doesn't matter if your companies are in a good shape or not. You can exploit them, just destroy the enemy's capital, the other player's capital, and that's it. Here it's different. The game cannot end with a bankruptcy, and there is simply no bankruptcy in this game. So you are interested that your companies are doing good. It's more this kind of running a good company game. You want to create something other than destroy something here. And therefore, you might be a little more careful that you don't completely exploit your company here. So maybe prices will not be that high during the auction, because you might not be able to really, or you might not want to really sell your company for $220 to your major company, and in this way pretty much ruin your major company for the rest of the game. But I don't know that, it's hard to tell. Maybe we will see some more aggressive players might be willing to take that risk, while more conservative players in this game really want to hold back a little bit when it comes to this auction here. Okay, so we're at the end of the auction, and this guy here received the $50, the $50 company here with the free tile placement, and the most valuable one, or possibly the most valuable one, the one that comes with a 10% share, the MOB. And I think that went, if I'm not mistaken, for 215 or something. Maybe, yeah, something like that. So it pays out 25, can be sold for 280, and you get an additional share, which is possibly also worth something between 60 and 100. So I think 215 is an okay price for that. But of course the problem is you got to first get a company going and then somehow try to sell the thing. The good thing for him is that he's got that cheaper company too. So he might sell that first to get some boost, so he can start some other company then to a higher value, and then he can sell that one. And well, the best thing of course would be if he could sell it, if he could then start the MOB somehow, because that would make his share also work. Right now he only sits on $230, so he's not going to be able to start a major company, but he can start a small company. This guy, he ended up only with the train, so he has no real private in a sense that he could sell something in. He's the most conservative player, so he was holding back a little with the auction, but he tried. But some guys, especially this one, he's a pretty aggressive guy, so that's why he has he just simply had a little higher odds when I rolled the dice here. So he sits on $400. He received that company for 110. So not for minimum value. This guy also threw a bit in here. But then he thought, okay, the train isn't so bad, so I'm going to spend 110. I still got a lot of money left, so I can do some cool things with it. This guy here, he got 300, well, about $400 left. He bought the tunnel company, $80 face value, and the additional 50 for the tunnel. I think that one went for 120 or something. He ended up with the cheapest company, and then he bought the F&M that comes with the presidency, and I think he spent 190. So it was also not the minimum value. He thought, yeah, that might be worth 190. I make $30 out of it per operating round until it runs a train. I can start it at 100, which he did. So yeah. This guy received this Furka Oberaltbahn, the company that can place that weird tile. What's more important, he can sell it for 220. Not sure how much he paid for it. I think 140. I think something like that. So now the player who has now the least money left will be the first player. And this is not a standard. During the stock round, actions are not done in seeding order in this game, but you follow these cards. And in the first stock round, the player who has the least money after the auction goes first, and then it goes basically in ascending money order. In the follow-up stock rounds, the player with the most money after the last stock round goes first, and then it goes in descending money order. Okay, so this guy up here starts the stock round, and now the question is, what do we want to start? Do we want to start something? Well, I guess we want to start something. We have here 230 bucks, and so the thing is, if we want to start a minor company, we cannot afford to start a major company on our own. You're going to need at least 300 bucks to do that. We could, however, technically we could start the F&M because they're already 20% out. So we could try that, but I don't think that makes a lot of sense. First of all, I could not hold the presidency if I wanted to do that, so I'm just... I don't get control over the company. Second, I think it is not necessarily the best company. I've already said that. It is a very good company. It might make a lot of revenue at the start because it can run from here twice to Milano, and it can run there for if it has 2 trains, it can run in yellow for 120, and I think this is actually the highest revenue that is available in yellow. However, as I already said, it pays out 12 per share because these are 10% shares. And that isn't so great. So for example, I think this one here, if it runs 2 trains, one to Strasbourg, that would be 5, and then one down here for 4, it would run for 90 bucks. And this company has 25% shares. So that means you're making kind of like 23 per share. That's more than double what the other company makes. So therefore, from this point of view, these smaller companies make a lot more sense at the start of the game. The problem is he will not, if he starts one of these companies, he can get a maximum of 200 bucks in the treasury, and he's basically going to need everything to get this company running, to get the trains and the terrain cost and all that, and until he gets the remaining money, he's got to connect, for example, to this tile here. We always have to connect to the destination to get the full amount of money, otherwise we only get 50%. I already mentioned that. So that means he will not be able to, at least for a while, to buy these things in. I mean, you can only do that from the 3 from phase 3 anyway. But I think it's a pretty sure bet that if he starts a pre-state company, which will only have, even if it is connected to its destination, a maximum of 400 bucks in the treasury, he will not be able to sell probably not even one of his companies for the full value, which would be 280 to its company. Maybe that one he could do somehow. So you can see these are the things you have to consider. If you wanted to start one of these pre-state companies, which might make the most value, he probably will not be able to sell his privates to this company. And he's actually not allowed to do it. I forgot about that anyway. He's not going to be allowed to do it because only the regionals and the majors can buy these kind of companies. So that's something he might want to consider. So I think his strategy will be that he starts a pre-state railroad, tries to make a lot of money out of that, and then he simply starts a new company, a major company or something, and then he's going to try to sell his privates into the new company. That seems maybe like a better choice. So in my opinion, the most interesting companies from the local companies, or from the pre-state companies at the start, are this one here, the SCB, and the NOB here. This one is located near Strasbourg, which is 30, and it can make a good run there. Very soon it can run 2 trains. This one is here in Zurich. Zurich will eventually be a better company. It's close to a 00, and it is also close to one of these. So I think these 2 companies are the most interesting ones at the start. So on a 1 to 3, I think I'm going to start this one. On a 4 or 5, I'm going to start this one. And on a 6, I'm going to look for something else. Okay, so we're going to start this one here, which will be the most profitable company at the very first during the very first operating rounds. And I'm going to start it at $100 because, as I already said, these companies will only get twice their par value as starting capital. So it's exactly the $200 that they will get. And so we're going to place that here. Oops. There we go. And we're going to receive the 50% presidency. Okay, so second is him. And this guy, he holds the 20% presidency. He's got, well, close to, not quite $500. So he could not start the F&M, and he's also not terribly interested in doing it. The reason is that the company will stop paying out the $30 once the first train runs. Now, when the train runs, this company will make $12 per share, so he will receive only $24 for these 2 shares, while now he actually receives $30. I mean, okay, you could argue he makes also some money from the shares themselves, and that then he will be in a better shape than he is actually with the $30. But still, you know, I think right now I'm not terribly interested that this company gets started. I think I want to go with something else. And if somebody else starts it and steals the presidency from me, well, that's okay. You know, I can sell this thing then for $200, the 2 shares. I mean, not in the first round. Although I could. What's interesting here, you can sell shares of companies that have not yet operated, but the thing is here, when you sell shares, no matter how many, the value drops 1 space. And when you sell shares of a company that has not yet operated, then the value will drop one space, and then you get the money for the new value. So it's not a good idea to sell shares of companies that have not yet operated, but it is possible. But you get penalized for it. Okay, so I'm also going to roll a die on a 1 to 4. I'm going to start the NOB. Okay, that's a 1. So I'm going to do that, and I also will start it for $100, and it's same type of company, same situation here. The company will float immediately, and it will receive a starting capital of 200. I really don't see. I mean, you could float these companies at a lower price, of course, but and maybe for 90 it makes sense. But you really gotta, to get a real profit out of it, you probably have to start it high. Otherwise, you could not really afford 2 trains. You know, starting such a company for $60, I don't think that will make a lot of sense. You could do it here, for example. You can connect very fast, and you could say, okay, I'm going to start it really low, trying to get maybe 1 or 2 additional shares, and then just run the company. It is possible with this company. With some of the other companies, it seems nearly impossible because it takes you a while to get to the full capital. Here you just have to connect to Aarau, so that's not a big deal here. But I'm going to start it for 100 anyway. So to me now, the 2 most obvious companies are gone. These are the 2 that seem like really very good starting companies. There are still others that seem kind of interesting. But I mean, we already talked about how the 10 share companies are a little bit of an issue, although this one might not be terrible here. I think that the 5 share companies are really not great at the start of the game. The reason is you can only afford, you can only run H trains. You get a full capitalization, which is good. You don't need to go to a destination, but you can only run H trains, and you only have 5 shares. So you don't get that much money. So, for example, this company here, the CHA, you cannot run to off-board areas with an H train. Otherwise, that would be a pretty cool company. You could go here and you could make really solid money. But you can't. So basically, I only can run a 2H train right now in yellow. I can exactly run 1 single train. I can run from here to here. This is the only route I have with a 2H train. And I cannot even lay a token here to get somewhere else, because in yellow this is only a single dot and or single space, and that is reserved for this company. So that means the company can only run for $40 basically. I mean, okay, it would be 8 per share, which isn't as bad, but it's definitely not great. I mean, we already discussed that, for example, this company kind of like makes, I don't know, like 23 per share or something. So that's 3 times that. So that's a company you don't really want to start. I think it might get more interesting later if you can run a 3 train, maybe here, for example, maybe down here to St. Moritz, here maybe, but at least now, and then you might, I mean, you might consider, yeah, if you run a 3 train, you could go to St. Moritz, for example, place a dot there, then you get the option to run here to this mountain railroad and here, and then it might not be that bad anymore. But I think in yellow it's really bad. What else? The other one would be the JN. This is this one here, and that is also, I mean, that's total crap. This company simply has no route. actually it does. The company could run to Biel. Okay? They cannot run here. So they can run to Biel with a 2 train, but that's it. So their run would be 30 in yellow, and that's it. So I mean, definitely nothing for me. We have the other one is the VZ, which seems like it's not total garbage, but it's definitely also not great. At least you can run 2 trains like this. So you could run for 60. That means you get kind of like, I don't know, how much is that? 15? No, not quite. 12 per share. Well, okay. I mean, okay, it's as good as the F&M. That's crazy, but it is as good as the F&M. So it's not terrible. But I think that the pre-Startspan still offer better options. The VSB can run here, they can run here, and here these are only 4-share companies, and they also can run here. They can run the off-board trains. So that's definitely a better chance. The JS can go down here to this 40 space, maybe lay a dot here, and then can run to Lyon. And even the GB can go here and maybe here. And maybe eventually a little later in green, they might be able to go to this one. So these companies really seem better to me. So I'm simply going to roll a die between the 3 pre-state railroads, starting here, here, and here. Okay, so I'm going to go with this one. This one is probably the most tricky one. Because the problem with this company is the money is down here. It's this 2 train that can run for $70, which is really good. And the problem is you need a dot there. So the question is, if we raise $200, is that enough to do that? So we got to spend $20 here, 40 for the dot, which is 60, and then we have $140 left. That's not enough for 2 trains. So, shit. So maybe it's not as good. So we can only run then for I gotta think about that. So here's the problem. If I do this here, if I follow that route, for example, I gotta spend 20, 60 for the dot, and then I don't have enough for 2 trains. If I buy 1 standard train, that means I'm at 150, so I got 50 left. And then I can run here for 70. Now 70 isn't bad, but I can only run for 70 as long as the 2 trains run. If they get downgraded, I cannot go here, then it will be only 50. So the thing is here, if I run 2 trains here in yellow, I can also only run for 70. Like this or like that, because this pays only 10. So that doesn't make a difference. And these guys, I think they could run for 80. But maybe I have more potential here. So I think I'm going to go with that company. The thing is, if I make the $150 expenditure here, I got to try then to go here to connect to Neuchâtel, and that is not that takes a little. I got to go past the mountains here for 30, and then I got to make my way here. But I think I want to try that anyway. So this guy has now basically two options left if he wants to start a pre-state, which is what he wants. He could either start that or the VSB. Now the GB here, it has this problem. It only gets the second half of the money if this tunnel here is built, the Gotthard tunnel. And well, obviously this is a bit of a problem because he could do it. He's got a tunnel company, so that's an advantage for him to do that. But the problem is, it doesn't give the company a big advantage. There is nothing here at the moment, and the company does simply not have the capital to build a 90 track and an 80 track. Even the tunnel was going to be very, very hard. They can probably only build the tunnel if they just buy a single train, and then they could afford the tunnel. Okay, that would then give them access to 200 additional bucks. So maybe it's an option, but yeah, the problem is he would not really profit from the tunnel if he builds it here with his tunnel company, because there is no way, it will not be used, at least at the start of the game. I think eventually the F&M will probably build there because they want to go here. That is their destination. So the F&M will probably build the Gotthard tunnel if nobody else does it. But that might take a while. And yeah, they have to build then this connection that costs them 150 bucks. So I don't know. I think right now the Gotthard is not exactly an attractive tunnel to build because it will not give a lot of revenue. So anyway, the company isn't bad. I can run 2 trains here, and I might consider, maybe, I don't know, I can swallow and build that stupid tunnel, and then I get an additional 200 bucks, which might finance me a 3 train to go here, for example. I don't really know, but it's at least an option. And if I don't buy the Gotthard Bahn, hey, who cares? I can even run 2 Hex Trains here. So I think until the 4 comes out, this company will make good money. So let's see, I'm gonna roll a 1 to 3, and this one is a 5 to 6. Okay, so we're gonna start the GB for 200 bucks. And actually I don't even need to buy 2 standard trains. It doesn't give me an advantage. I can simply buy 2 Hex Trains right now, run here and here, and then we'll see. Now here's kind of an interesting decision, because I can it's okay for me to buy two trains, 2 H trains, and it's probably going to be very hard to get the second the remaining money anyway. I might consider starting the thing for a lower value. So, but I'm not sure. So the thing is, technically I only need 160 bucks to set up this route from Stans to Luzern and to Altdorf. So I could do that for 160 bucks, including the terrain and 2 2H trains. And I could run that route until the 4 trains come. And that's not bad. So I could start the company for 80, which would save me 40 bucks. maybe I want to do that. It seems like an interesting idea. I would then get another 160 in case I manage to somehow build that train or that tunnel. I mean, that's not a lot of money. But that whole tunnel action is going to be very unlikely anyway. So, you know, I think on a 1 to 4, I'm actually considering that. The thing is, though, if I started higher, let's say I started for 200 or for 100, and so I have 200, I would have 40 bucks left. Then with a single swallow, I would have the cash to actually place the tunnel and get the remaining 200 bucks, which is also cute. So I'm really not so sure about that. I think on a 1 to 4, I'm going to start the thing low. Yeah, okay, that's a 2. So I'm going to start it only for... Yeah, I'm only going to start it for 80 bucks. So this player here started the VSB, which is up here, for 90. The reason is he also doesn't necessarily need that much. He can buy definitely 1 hex train. Probably he can buy 2 hex trains, because this München doesn't pay out more than Rorschach does here. So he can buy 2 hex trains, and he also does not have a lot of terrain cost. If he wants to go to Sargans, which is his destination, it's going to cost him 20. So it would have been fine starting it with 80, but he is a very conservative player, so therefore he just wanted a little more money in his company here, and he started it at 90. So the company starts with 180 bucks. Now that leaves, now everybody started as one company, and basically all the state railroads, I forgot that one, the JS. Who was that? This guy started the JS. Now all the state railroads are floated. And there are 2 players who have still 200 bucks left. More than that, actually. So there are 2 players who technically could now start a second company. However, that's now, the thing is, now there are only these, I mean, there are obviously the major companies, but nobody can start them. There are the regional companies now left. Now the problem with them is you got to buy 3 shares to float them, not only 2 anymore. So you could float them at 70. Both of them could do that. But that would mean that they would have only a starting capital on overall capital of 350, which is really not a lot. So I don't know if that is, I mean, this guy definitely will not take the risk. Here, I also don't know. Maybe I'm better off investing in some other companies. I mean, there is still a lot of stuff out there. So I guess that is probably a better choice. So now some players are starting to invest in other companies. This guy had not 100 bucks, so he was really happy when someone else started companies at a lower value, which allowed him to afford another share of the GB. This guy here, he thought he still has enough money to buy other shares. He thought about buying a share of the most profitable company, which will be this one here. This makes the biggest revenue. The share would cost 100 bucks, and he could have easily afforded that. However, if you think about that, the company will probably be sold out at the end of the stock round. So it will go up in share value. But after that, it will no longer go up in the upcoming stock rounds because it is already at the top. So he decided to buy another share of the GB because that will probably also be sold out. It's the second best company, but it will do this additional jumps toward the top, and it might be in the end the more profitable one. You are allowed in this game to hold more than 60% of a company. The way it works is you can buy from the initial offer as long as you do not hold more than half of the overall shares of a company. So as long as you hold only 50%, you can buy additional shares from the initial offer. You can always buy shares from the bank pool, no matter how much you own from a company. So in theory, you could hold up to 100%. Okay, so we're at the end of the stock round. 3 companies are sold out. The NOB and the SCB go up, and the GB also goes up. Okay. We have a new turn order for the next stock round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we jump quite a bit around the table. Okay, so I think at that point I actually want to load it up. We didn't even make it into the first operating round, but there is really a lot going on in this game, a lot to explain. It is a pretty advanced game, and there are a lot of things that are very easy to forget. So hope this is not going to happen. And yeah, by the way, at the end of a stock round, a train is exported, so removed from the game. So we shouldn't forget that. Okay, hope to see you on the next video or on lonesomegamer.com.